Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Therapeutic Thursday with me, John Quick, a fellow aortic survivor of 18, and I just realized it's 18 and a half years now. So, gradually chalking up the time, hopefully, the experience. Um, I will come to the gentleman joining me today from Nova Scotia, Canada, who is Jeremy Porter. But first of all, I must ask you to like and subscribe, get the T-shirt, etc., etc. Just a word about me. I had a type A aortic dissection out of the blue, as I say, 18 and a half years ago. Had an aortic valve replacement and a prosthesis in the ascending aorta. I subsequently dissected down into the abdomen, the type B, then down on into my iliacs. And that has been defensively managed with medication for the last 18 and a half years. And as a result of that, I then made some life changes. I'd always been very interested in psychology, and I started doing some psychology courses and starting to gain qualifications and so forth. And I've been working with organizations and charities to offer therapeutic support, particularly in the area of trauma and PTSD. Now, before we come to Jeremy, uh, I just wanted to mention a couple of things that I've been thinking about in the week, which I think might be quite useful. And the question of rumination has cropped up quite a lot for people, that we quite easily tend to ruminate about this condition. And I was having a think about this, the kind of state of rumination. I've kind of mentioned that sometimes one of the therapeutic approaches is you work with your client and you agree with them that they'll be able to ruminate at a set time, maybe a couple of times a day, and they can go and sit in their chair and they have a jolly good old rumination. And they find, of course, when they go to sit in their chair, right, I'm going to ruminate now. And
Mm.
it can't ruminate. It's
Gonna get
like
right in the mode.
the rumination is constipated. And I mean, which I think is very interesting. And if we look into that, sort of the question is, well, why is that then? What is the state of mind where we do actually start ruminating? And the other
Mm.
thing I mentioned previously is when you're doing certain things, you can't ruminate. You can't ruminate when you're humming. And actually, if you're working on your breathing and say lying on the floor on a mat, doing the three stages of breathing, it's very, very difficult to ruminate.
Mm.
And one of the things I was thinking about is I'm also a qualified hypnotherapist. And one of the principles of that is that in order to get someone into a deep state of relaxation, we get them to focus on a specific point or a specific idea. So there's a kind of release of the mind to be able to go to a deeper state. And an analogy might be, have you noticed when you're driving, which requires a specific set of skills, you can also kind of be released into other thought modes. And I wouldn't mind betting that on journeys you know particularly well, that you actually find yourself ruminating.
Mm.
Um,
Makes sense.
yeah, and the interesting thing about that then is, what is it about rumination then? Is it some kind of semi-hypnotic state? And it struck me thinking about this, and I'm going to do some more research on it, that in a way, rumination is when the mind is kind of idling. It
Mm.
goes into a kind of neutral, and that we can actually have the space to ruminate. And because I like working a lot with kind of visual images and visual metaphors, I was thinking it kind of reminds me of when, maybe, a lot of people out there who are too young to remember this, but those of us who had turntables with amplifiers, and we had vinyl records and a needle we put on the amplifier, there would be times where you'd go away and the record would finish and you'd come back into the room, for example, and you realize the record is still turning and,
Mm.
and the needle is just going round and round and round. Maybe there's one note repeating. And that struck me as quite an interesting kind of visual metaphor for rumination. That almost like we ruminate sometimes when we haven't actually got anything better to do.
Mm.
And I would love to hear from somebody who's actually made progress with this condition or any part of their life by ruminating on it. Love to hear from you. I think that worry goes quite close to that. So that was the first point I wanted to bring up. And the second point we will come to today, actually, I think, is when I spoke with Jeremy in the week, we talked about this a little, that one of the things about our condition, I think, especially if you've had open heart surgery like I have, is the surgeons told me that after kind of 9 hours of it kind of being held open with all of these clamps,
Mm,
it never goes back together again in the same way. And mine's got pins. I'm sure plenty of you have the same thing. And I've seen them on the scans, and you kind of think, oh, how does that ever stay together? There must be a lot of force. And one of my most recurrent symptoms, which I've worked with an osteopath about, is I tend to bring my shoulders in. And then I also get tension in my diaphragm. And one of the things he's worked with me to do is to work on opening my shoulders. That's what he'll do when I'm on my couch. But I've also found that one of the best things that we can do is to concentrate on bringing our heads up when we
mm,
walk. Because a lot of the time, I don't know about you, but I'm often sort of looking on an angle down to the ground. And I know sometimes we have to be a little bit careful, for the state of roads or pavements or whatever. But it is amazing how if you just bring up your chin, how automatically your spine will come into line, how your breathing immediately expands, and your posture takes on a more normal position.
mm.
And I think that's a simple, healthy thing for us to be remembering if, like me, you get kind of post-operative pain.
Hmm, makes sense.
So, without further ado, I would like to introduce Jeremy, who is joining us today from Nova Scotia, Canada.
Yes, sir.
So, welcome, Jeremy.
Thank you,
Um,
John.
it's a pleasure to have you here.
Likewise.
You've told me a few things, and I mean, let's start at the very beginning. And um, this this problem happened for you roughly 6 months ago.
Yeah,
Am
just
I
under six
right? Yes.
months. Yes, sir.
Would you like to talk us through a little bit? How that all occurred and what
Certainly.
kicked
No,
off then?
sounds great. No, so I'm 47 years old at the time. Three kids, a wife, a dog, and a rabbit. And
Hmm.
my children, two of them are at university in the city, about an hour away from where I live.
Yeah.
And so I was driving one home, and then picking up another one just to go to a cafe kind of thing and have a little time together. The morning before that trip to the city, it was just a normal day for me. I'd gone to the gym and done some weightlifting. My parents have come down to our temporary house. We were in an Airbnb at the time, and we just enjoy a nice little hike together and a little lunch break. But to the point, I was in the city on my own, just driving around, seeing those kids. And essentially on the way home, I was around 8 o'clock at night or so. I was just driving along like a normal trip home, and my left arm sort of went numb. My back pain started to really get really bad, and started to sweat really profusely. And I always just say a gorilla started to jump on my chest. So
Mm,
essentially between nipple, and almost to the belly button in a triangle fashion, this gorilla was just jumping up and down and having its way with me. And I was at a green light at the time, so I wasn't sure exactly what was happening. I've never had any prior heart issues or any
mm,
other significant medical problems. So basically, I pulled over in a parking lot. I pulled into a little drive-through Starbucks restaurant, thinking
mm,
I'm fine. Maybe I just had a spicy sandwich. Maybe it was really bad heartburn or something. Still trying to understand why this gorilla was having its way with me.
mm,
And I do remember walking out of the car to the restaurant trying to get a glass of water because I thought, sure, if I can have a glass of water, that will abate this feeling. And the cashier person at the door was just locking up. So she pointed to her watch, right, and said, "You have to go, like we're closing." So I, I walked through the drive through, just desperate to get a glass of water from this
mm.
barista. And I probably looked terrible. I was hunched over, sweating, all sorts
Oh,
of bad things as I look back on this sort of thing, John. And I don't know if she thought I was on some sort of narcotic or drug. And so they
That's the
closed the
trouble
door.
with society today. Where people we get embarrassed to actually be ill in a normal way, don't we?
Yeah, a little
Yeah,
bit. Yeah.
yeah.
So she closed the door, and I'm like, okay, fine. So I went back to the car, and I was convinced I was maybe still this heartburn. My mindset was still just temporary, whatever this was. So I sat in the car for roughly half an hour. I tried to call my wife and my other daughter. They were about an hour away from our home at a
Mm.
craft show. It was near the Christmas season, so they were at a little craft market. Couldn't reach either of them. Decided not to leave voicemail. I don't know why. Probably might have been my last words as I thought back, and I never left a message for either of them.
Mm.
But yeah, half hour, 45 minutes into my car, I was feeling no better. The gorilla was still jumping up and down, and called 911. And the ambulance and fire responders came. They started to hook me up to the machines and everything, get me some early sensors. That felt better because I had some nitroglycerin from them, and
Okay.
little spray or two of that. And I was convinced again because I was this male person that I'm fine, I'm fine. This is just
Is that what it
temporary.
was? Is that your default generally? That
I
I'm
think so.
fine, and you get on with it, and don't
Yeah,
make a
yeah,
fuss.
yeah. I mean,
Mm.
the pain was unbearable. It's the
That's-
worst I've ever felt. But I was,
So actually calling 911 was kind of stepping over something that you didn't really want
oh,
to do at
mhm,
all.
absolutely. Never in my life did I want to call that number. So
Yeah.
I
Well,
always
who
thought it
does?
was
Yeah.
for persons far worse than me or other situations that are far worse than mine, and I never
Mm.
dialed. So yeah. So the ambulance respondents, I convinced them somehow that I was fine. So I decided to leave the ambulance. I was going to walk to my car and to get
Oh,
my
they
health
didn't. They
card.
didn't. They didn't pick up anything up on the when they
Oh, they
hooked you
did.
up. Then.
They knew something
Mm.
was wrong, but I was adamant that I was fine, and they don't have a right or an authority to make me go,
Okay.
basically. So I'd walk back to the car to get my wallet, and I figured, okay, here's my health card, provincial health card. And on the walk over to the car, I fell over, and in pain again. So I remember kind of hunched over, crawl back to the ambulance, and I said, "Hey, fellas, let's go for that drive after all." So we went off to the largest hospital in the area, the Queen Elizabeth II Hospital, and if I remember right, I think I had 14 more shots of nitroglycerin from them during the trip until when they could sign me off into the care of the hospital team. And
Take your
from there,
time. Take your time,
yeah,
Jeremy. If it's just want to check in with you that you're okay going through this, and yeah, it is
I
not
appreciate
too
that, John.
stressful for you.
No,
Yeah.
happy to share.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the hospital, I remember, and still is under construction, which is a good thing. It's going to increase the capacity of the hospital and everything.
Mm.
So I remember being wheeled in by the ambulance team. They were from a town not too far from me, so I sort of remember them. I recall who they might have been, but anyway, so they were with me until the nurses could take over. And the hospital was in quite a bit of disarray, so I was in the hallway of the hospital, which was normal at the time, until I could be triaged and cared for. I remember my wife is a registered nurse. She works in community, largely with seniors, and my sister-in-law, she's also a nurse who works in different departments, but she has ER experience.
Mm.
So I remember somehow my one of my nurses must have known Laura, my sister-in-law, and so a call was made to Laura before I could reach my wife and everything. And I can't remember exactly how it all came to be, but I was like, "Oh crap! Like Laura found out, I'm in big trouble now. Like this is going to be a huge drain. Like what am I doing to the healthcare system? Why is this gorilla still pounding on my chest and all this sort of thing, right?"
So you
Anyway,
didn't want
so
to,
I didn't want to be
therapeutically,
in
I'd be right in
trouble.
on this one. You didn't want to bother anyone, did you?
Not a person. I was thinking there's again people that are far worse than me, John. I'm just
Mm.
this healthy, fairly easygoing fella, a little bit of a jokey attitude.
Self-effacing. Yeah.
Exactly. Yep. Well, probably a lot of denial as you look back.
Mm.
And yeah, so I fast forward. I'm sure by then I was guided into the hospital and given through the different intake stages where they did their processing to decide and confirm that I had a dissection.
Mm. So they picked that
Uh,
up. They did a CT scan on you?
Yeah, so I remember being wheeled in by a medical office assistant because the hospital was short-staffed, and he was kind of going through this little network of hallways, and I was happy because the air was cool in the hospital. I could feel the cool air on my feet, and anyway, I had the CT scan, and I remember in the CT scan they have little clouds on the ceiling because I'm claustrophobic and I don't like that. So I remember focusing on the clouds while they did their
Mm.
scan.
Well, they're never. It's never a particularly nice experience,
No,
is it? You know, well, why would one like it?
no, I think I've had 5 scans now since my surgery, but
Mm,
yeah, it's been quite a journey. So you know, confirmed it was a type A dissection. I obviously don't remember any of the surgery. I've
mm,
been medicated out of my brain basically. I remember my family were all there, coming and going, like little flashes, little bits of memory, little stories that I've had from my family. My wife and my kids were there, and
mm.
there were tears shed because nobody really knew what a dissection was. Nobody
Yeah.
knew, even before that stage, what my treatment would be and why I had been there. I
Yeah,
knew it
so
wasn't a
hugely
heart attack.
shocking for them to have obviously got phone calls and been brought in and
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
mm.
Yeah, survived the
And it
surgery.
sounds like straight away it weighs on you that you put them through that
Oh,
suffering.
I hate being a bother to anyone.
Yeah,
I
it's
fast
interesting
forward
that
a little
I
bit.
pick up on that straight away.
Trained eye. See, yep, yep. Even from where you are and where I am, we can see that.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, yeah. So fast forward a little bit. I remember doing a therapy session actually to that point, John, and it was an exercise where you had to like draw the factors in your life in a visual form, like circles, how large or small something was in scale. So, my work was this big of a circle, my family was this big, my dog, my rabbit, and on it goes.
Mm.
But the me circle about self-care and care I had taken up to that point of myself was probably the smallest circle on the page, basically, because I never really worried about myself. I was always thinking about other people, my family, or
Yes.
those involved with my work or my volunteerism and that sort of thing. And
Mm.
yeah, so part of this process has
S-
been to figure that out.
So, Jeremy, it would,
Yes.
an important for us to address because I've called it before positive selfishness, that
Hmm.
we can't take care of other people unless we take care of ourselves. And
Very true.
often and it's there, I think, also very much in the male culture as well, isn't it? That you kind of
Yeah.
you get on with it and sort of things as males.
Yeah.
Um, do you think in these last 6 months that it's made you reframe that and sort of reassess that and begin to kind of try and grow that circle for yourself a bit?
I begin to, absolutely. Yeah, I'm trying to. Started off with a lot of guilt. Like, I was a drain to my family because I couldn't get up and do the things like I would normally do.
Mm,
I was sitting in a reclining chair. I couldn't get up out of bed myself. I, had to help in the shower and that sort of thing. Like all these things I'd
yeah.
never thought about, but I felt like a drain to my family, and
So we won't
yeah,
go there now because
no, that's
this
fine.
this isn't a hardcore full-on therapy session, but obviously it would be important to address
Mhm.
why that is the status quo for you
Right.
and what has occurred for you in order to be so obviously kind of self-effacing. And even when you've been to death's door and now you're sort of on this recovery path,
Hmm.
to still struggle to find the permission to go, hello.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Help me, hold
Help me
me,
figure
cuddle
myself out.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess part of that was unpacking my old mentality, and um, my wife and I like to joke a little bit, and we call it the Jeremy 2.0 version of the changes I need to make in my mindset and my
That's nice.
my exercise and diet and so on.
Mm.
Um, and
So
so part of it is,
tell us a bit more
oh,
about tell us a bit more about Jeremy 2.0 then.
I guess it's a journey that's still unfolding, I guess, John, but it's a lot of self-care. So I'm 6 months essentially past my surgery, and
Mm.
thankful every day that I'm still here on this planet to be the person that I'm going to be. Um, I've had the good fortune to be off work for a while, so I have some security from that, from a salary standpoint, and the support from my employer. Um, But beyond that, it's the support of my family, who
Hmm.
help me every single day move forward in a different way. Um,
Yes.
6 months out, I'm not so much the physical piece of it because I have that strength to get up out of the bed and to, shower and all those hygiene things. I can get up for the walks with my dog and can enjoy a little
Mm.
bit of exercise and those sorts of things to help me feel good about myself. Um, but
And
again,
in
it's
terms of
just,
your energy and 6 months on,
mm,
bearing in mind you're still working to get a general anesthetic out of your system, how would you how would you rate your energy?
uh,
If let's say if your energy was, well, obviously no one's is 100%, but let's use
right.
that before. Where would you say you were on that scale now?
Yeah, it just honestly depends on the day. Like,
Ah,
I'm more aware of where things are in terms of like maybe the wrong word to use is triggers. Like, so I knew
mm-hmm,
before I was a candle being burnt at both ends in terms of work and family and volunteerism and things. So now I've reined all that back and I've learned to slow my mind down and my body down so I can essentially, John, what I do is things in half-hour stints. So I get up in the morning, I go through the process of whatever that involves,
mm,
breakfast and so on, and some family contact. And then half hour, or maybe I go for that walk with my dog. Next half hour, maybe I sit and read a book. Next half hour, I'm sitting on the deck and enjoying the sun and
mm-hmm,
just absorbing the sound of birds chirping and those sorts of things. Just
yeah.
trying to execute pieces of mindfulness and meditation in my life, which I never had done before. And then
So how
as I,
is Jeremy
yeah,
2.0 with that? I mean, because it sounds nice, doesn't it? But and I
it
know
does
it for
sound
myself
nice.
as well. But I know myself too that it's, we can say all of these kind of things, but is there a part of you that misses the old
Oh
Jeremy
gosh.
who just went for it and goes for it and just never
Oh,
thinks about
absolutely.
anything? And
Yeah, totally. I was essentially laser focused on my work. So yesterday, for example, I work at a small college, a very small campus. It's quite intimate. We have about 450 students or so.
mhm,
And yesterday was our convocation day. My niece was graduating, and a retired colleague. It was very nice to kind of say, you really should come out and come to the graduation ceremony. I hadn't been on campus really for those 6 months.
mm.
I'm a student services person, so I like to shorten my job to say I'm a go-to person for support and service for about 300 and some odd students. And so
I bet
yesterday
you
was
see a real slice
convocation.
of life there, don't you?
Oh goodness, it's amazing. Yeah, it's running the gambit of whatever I can do for each student and what they may
Mm,
need at that time. Sometimes it's a one-of little interaction. Other times it's a recurring thing that I provide support to over the run of a semester or the academic
mm.
year. But yeah, so yesterday was convocation. It was the longest outing I've had since my surgery. Held focus with conversations, which I hadn't really been able to do, and got to reconnect with a lot of great faculty and student services colleagues, and of course the graduating students. Had a lot of hugs and handshakes and
So
some
people,
tears
great
and cries.
sort of people were happy to see you back, and
Oh gosh, it was
yeah,
amazing. Yeah, no, there was all sorts of hugs
lovely.
and yeah, it
And how
was
was it for you to
great.
like go out into the world again like in that way? Were you very tired by the end of the day?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I found
Mm,
myself slipping into the Jeremy 1.0 with that go, go, go. I'm going to be great. I'm going to be fine. Don't talk about me, my heart issue. I'm just the same old fella, right? How are
mm,
you? How's your day? Are you working as a graduate? How can I help you? I remember saying that to a couple of graduates, even though I no way to contact them. I don't have access to my work email or work phone numbers. I don't know what I was thinking. So that Jeremy 1.0 mentality took over, I guess.
yeah.
Um, I arrived home, collapsed basically on my bed, slept for an hour and a half. It was my son's birthday. Uh, and so I don't know if it's fitting or not, but we were driving in. I wasn't driving, obviously. I was still quite tired.
Mm.
And I remember my field of vision was like a milkshake blender or a coffee blender or, fruit juice smoothie thing where everything was swirling. And it was just, I couldn't quite get a focus on anything at all when we were driving.
So
Went
you
to the
the tiredness had done that. Is that
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because
is
I
that have you
was
noticed that before?
only when I push myself, I guess, when I really like kind
Mm,
of, if you get up in the morning because you know you have to go to a medical appointment. I slipped it in earlier, but I've had like 4 or 5 CT scans and a number of echocardiograms as a part of my
yeah,
recovery to check on things. A couple of other medical setbacks in my recovery too. So when the anxiety of going back to a hospital or clinic, I can feel myself get tired from that.
yeah.
I
Anxiety is tiring, isn't it? Yeah.
think so, yeah. So I just
Mm,
pushed through yesterday because I knew it was so important because I wanted to see my niece and I knew I wanted to
mm,
see those graduating students and to be darned with Jeremy 2.0, Jeremy 1.0 wanted to be there.
mm. Well, I
It's
suppose what we could take from that
yeah,
is, you were tired, but you've done it, haven't you?
yep,
You know,
exactly. So it felt good in
and
the
here you
moment.
are. You know.
Yeah, exactly. So now I'm here to share my story with you and a few other folks who might be
Mm.
watching on our conversation.
I
Yeah.
think we have to strike a balance as well in recovery between being careful, you know,
Mhm.
baby steps, but
Yeah.
also kind of working to do things like that to
Right.
recover our confidence so
Mm,
that, as I've said before, the comfort zone doesn't, or we don't stay within our comfort zone, and then comfort zones only go one way, they tend to shrink.
right.
um yeah, so I know it hasn't been an easy 6 months for you. Do you feel comfortable with sharing some of the
Oh, sure. Yeah,
challenges
no,
you've had?
couple things. This might be a little bit gross. So some of the
Well,
medications
we
and
should
things.
probably, if
Get that?
one of them, we should just say,
Okay,
this
we'll
is
skip that
quite
story.
a sense. Well,
The
no,
other
we can
story.
do it if you're comfortable, but I'm just going to say it is a quite um it's a strong story that you may well be sharing with us.
Okay, I'll skip the grosser story. And I guess I'll focus on the a big concern for me is it's either medication induced or not, but I've always been prone to nightmares my entire life and kind of really vivid dreams.
Mm,
But I found since my surgery that they've got a lot darker and a lot more concerning dreams. So I have a little book here, and basically whenever I have a nightmare or a dream at 1 in the morning, 4 in the morning, whatever it is, I found myself waking up unable to sleep again because I couldn't breathe in the dream, or I was back on a operating table in the dream, or
yeah,
in the ambulance in the dream, or people were laughing at me, joking at me. It was all negative stuff where I used to have a little bit of balance with some positivity in my dreams, and now 95% of them easily were dark and negative and then yeah, quite concerning and scary.
mm.
And so I
That's
would,
that's tough. Yeah,
yeah,
and it's like, in this stage of recovery, in walks PTSD, doesn't it? Going,
I think so.
hello, and
Yeah,
I'm going to come and
yeah,
see you in the night,
exactly.
because again your mind is trying to sort something out, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, process things in the night because your
Mm,
body's largely settled and yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So I guess the biggest kind of story in terms of those dreams for 5 or 6 months, um, they were just progressively getting worse, getting worse. So I had a new medication. Along the way of recovery too, I had a diagnosis finally for sleep apnea.
Hmm.
So before we could enact the pill and before we had the CPAP machine, I was having a dream. I'm a Star Wars kind of fella, so if anybody out there knows what a Jawa is or Ewok is for Star Wars, you may
You do.
appreciate that.
You're the go-to man on that. Yeah.
Once in a while, yeah. So the little characters, all you really see of the Jawas at their eyeballs, right? And so my nightmare, it was a very lucid dream, John. I could feel my physical body on one side trying to wake myself up. And on the other side, I was deep, deep, deep in this dream where these Jawa characters were poking at me, laughing at me, chasing me, and that sort of thing. I was on the bed at the outside of the dream. I decided to relocate to my little chair in the living room so my wife wouldn't be disturbed by my sleep. Instantly, once I hit the chair, I fell back asleep again. Instantly back to the, being poked
So
by
you
these little.
woke and then you went back into the dream. How
Mm-hmm.
interesting.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
it's
it's
about
almost
100
like
feet.
a state of absolutely alternative consciousness, isn't it? An
So
existence.
yeah,
Mm.
yep. So right back to the dream on the chair. I started to scream at one point or another because again these little characters have by then ratcheted up their attack on me, and my wife heard me screaming, so she came out and Jeremy gave me a shake, and couldn't wake me up. I could hear her, I could interact with her perfectly fine during this active dream. I remember how she splashed water on me to try to get me to wake up. Wouldn't work. I was still answering her questions, still saying, honey, I'm in this deep, dark dream. I'm in this dream, and, trying to wake myself up. So I was convinced by then, basically, John, that if I could slide out of this chair and hide physically, then I would be safe. So I slid out of my chair onto the floor, decided in my semi-conscious brain to crawl around in my living room, behind the couch, behind the chairs, behind the tables, sliding on the floor, sort of like a little, sniper in the army or something. I don't know what I was doing. Very much in this dream, very much being chased by these characters, my wife and kids. By then had been woken up by my screaming and yelling. I started to clutch my chest. I couldn't breathe. I could hardly keep any air in, and complained of back pain and chest pain and the breathing issues. The ins and outs of consciousness were sort of still happening, so my wife got very concerned. She called 911. Um, Respondents came. I live in a very small community, and so the carpenter who built the house that I live in was one of those respondents, and the volunteer firefighters. A former neighbor in our old house is one of the EHS respondents. So I remember seeing them saying, "Hey Kyle, how you doing, buddy?" Like talking to them while very much again still in this dream.
Yeah.
And yeah, so still couldn't wake up. Became quite abusive apparently when they were trying to help me. So they eventually reached a stage where they couldn't get a blood pressure cuff on me, John, or anything else to kind of see what was going on. My chest was still really sore. My back was still really sore. I could lucidly answer all their questions. Again, still in the Star Wars dream with people chasing me, poking at me, trying to catch me on fire, and all that fun stuff. Um, so they drugged me. I remember once they tried to shoot something up my nose to kind of get me medicated, a little bit more tame, I suppose. And I kicked it away and punched it away. Anyway, so they eventually wrestled me down and got me on out of the home. I remember somehow thinking if I could slide down the stairs, I could escape. Or if I could
Mhm.
slip my arm or my face into the register, the little floor vents. Like I was still trying to escape from them because they had morphed in my dream to, not great first responders. They were attackers who were going to try to take me away. I remember crying and screaming, like, don't take me away, don't take me away.
Yeah.
And anyways, they took me away, rightfully, to the hospital. And to this day, it was about 3, 4 weeks ago that episode happened.
Oh, so
I
not long then.
No, it
Mm.
was the day before my birthday, so I was turned 48 the
Mm.
next day. And yeah, essentially I woke up back home. I had been in the hospital for I think about 12, 13 hours. I can't tell you a single thing that happened during that hospital stay. My wife and my mom and dad were there. I know that my niece, that graduated in practical nurse, she was there for a little check-in kind of thing. I couldn't tell you. I was heavily medicated or still out of it. And
Mm.
so that was the most extreme dream I've probably ever had. I've
Okay,
had
so I know
lucid things before, but
you've got some water there.
yeah, sure thing.
Just take a
Thanks.
sip. Yeah, let's just take a moment with that.
Yeah. So I don't mean to scare anyone from this story. That's not my intent or purpose. I think it's okay to talk about your story, I guess is maybe.
Totally, and we flagged it, and
Mhm.
um, I'm sure you have everybody's sympathy, but it's also interesting that straight away you take care of the other people, don't you? You say, "Oh, I don't want to scare anybody." My reaction to AM is very moving, and you have it. It's almost a definition of trauma
Hmm,
in it all by itself, and I'm sure it's sort of very distressing for you to manage that. So let's just clarify.
sure.
You showed us that little book. That's
Yep.
that's for therapeutic support that you're getting. Yes.
A little bit, yes. So well, I'm a highly organized person. So if I hold up to the camera, you can't see it; it'll be blurry.
Mm,
But I have that scribbler divided into sections, and I think it's part of
yeah.
my mindset, but also in my recovery to this Jeremy 2.0. I have a section for my dreams where I record them.
Mm,
I have a section for things with dietitian consults where I log the food that I've eaten for the day and in terms of how much protein or sodium and so on. I have another section for all the medical consultations that I've had with my specialists or my family doctors or all these little visits and blood works and things since I've had my surgery. I've done a lot of research in terms of aortic dissections and how they sort of present and the numbers and things from Aortic Hope or things from other resources. And so I have little notes in the book about what I've come to learn or find out. And then a section on my blood pressures and pulses and those sorts of things. So
mm.
this little book is essentially my recovery journey in
So
written form.
what does that give you to do that?
Uh, I think it's two things. One is just it helps my memory because I honestly won't remember our conversation tomorrow, even though it's been really awesome.
Mm,
Or I'll remember highlights of it, John. And so it helps me someday look back on the entire journey and do something with this story. I don't know what that'll
yeah.
be.
Okay.
Um, and I think it also helps me satisfy the Jeremy version where he likes to do things rather than stay idle. And so, as much as self care is important, and I've kind of learned and trying to retrain my mindset or my practice to do things like meditation, or it's okay to sit on the deck and pat your dog. It's okay to go for a
Sure.
walk and ruminate on ideas that are in your mind.
Mm,
It's okay to do these things rather than you must go to work. You must put all your
yeah.
110% effort into that.
and
Anyway,
and and we're often, it can be at worst the tyranny of the system out there, isn't it, that we're very trapped by that, and that causes degrees of stress for everyone. So much modern mental health is that
yeah.
I deal with is people coming to me and saying, I don't feel good enough, I haven't got enough energy, I'm not
Mm,
getting on, I'm not achieving things, and they a lot of self-blame goes on with that.
yeah.
And one of the things I try and do is turn it round by saying, but you tell me about your life circumstances, your costs, your mortgages, and everything like. And is it any surprise that you'd be feeling some stress? It's the
Mm,
system bearing down,
yeah.
um, and that perhaps raises a lot of questions about the whole way in which our society is structured. But
It's true.
um, I just want to also say to people, and I've probably mentioned this before, excuse me, says he knocking his microphone, um, is I have had a lot of dreams
Mm,
and I've never dreamt, post dissection like I do now. I think there are other factors in
mhm.
that as well in my life. My technique is that when I wake, because I'm not, I'm in that state where actually forming a written sentence would be quite hard for me. Just grab my phone and
Mhm.
I put them into the audio in my phone,
All right,
and
makes
then
sense.
sometimes play them back, and I've organized them, a few times into categories. It's also interesting that what I record at 4 o'clock in the morning and I play back 5 hours later, I often think, what, you sound completely drunk, John. You're slurring your words, and it gives me an insight into that kind of state between
Yeah,
sleep and being awake, and that, there is a transition there.
yeah,
But
absolutely.
just a few very broad generalizations about sleep, and it's often and dreams. It's a massive topic, obviously. And I said to you, I think when we were chatting the other day, that uh, it's dreams are like, it's like crying. There's
Mm,
always a truth. There's a truth there.
Makes
There's a
sense.
truth in the dreaming, and there's a truth when we cry. And
Sure.
often the way is to try and go into it without judgment and say, okay,
Mm,
so what, what's my mind trying to do here? What are
right.
my emotions? And because my first reaction when you tell me this is you've had the trauma of all of this happen to you, and then you've now got this kind of new trauma of the sleep
Hmm.
apnea,
Right.
um,
Yeah.
and then you've
Mhm.
got these dreams. I mean, an upsetting experience for you to go through, without a
Sure.
doubt.
Yeah. Oh gosh. If there was a way just to have the surgery and have my heart repaired by those expert surgeons and nurses and clinicians and so on, and then that's it, Jeremy, you're healed. That would be
Mm.
just perfect, wouldn't it?
Oh,
But
totally.
unfortunately,
Yeah. Wouldn't it just? Yeah.
as you were
But
saying earlier too, John, like 18 and a half years later, you still have concerns. Like you talked earlier on the episode about stretching open our chest and putting the shoulders back and things like
mm,
still this many years or months, in my case, it's yeah, it's a
well,
lingering thing.
it is a life management issue.
Mm,
We're in for the long
yeah,
haul.
yeah.
I say this is about supporting my football club. You call it a soccer club. Which I've been doing for longer than 18.5 years. It's a life sentence. You know,
Oh,
much as I might like to give up, I can't. And then life is like that. If you want to carry
absolutely.
on, yes. So,
Yeah.
what was I going to say to you there? So, oh, I w- I will let you, because I think it's important that we don't just use these terms.
Mhm.
Tell us a little bit about what sleep apnea is.
Sure. Well, I'm not really a person known for medical jargon, so I really can't speak to that.
Hmm. No, I'm
Um,
not asking you to do that. Just, but
no, phew.
you know what it is. I know you do.
Essentially,
Yeah.
yeah. It's when you lie down and you go to sleep, your muscles contract to the point where you can't get enough air
Hmm.
to fuel your body, even if it's a resting state. So sometimes when you're having this um, apnea episode, your body will dream and try to wake itself up because your heart and your brain need this oxygen that you're not getting, essentially. And so that's why maybe you roll around a lot at night, maybe. Or maybe that's why you feel like you have to get up to use the washroom, even though maybe physically your bladder doesn't need to. It's your brain trying to trick you to get up and get that oxygen flowing.
Right.
Or maybe it's when you have dreams, positive or negative, because your brain is again starving for that oxygen because it's not getting enough. And so now, again, on that Star Wars guy with the CPAP machine, it stands for
So,
something.
yeah, so you're getting medical help for this now, aren't you?
Yes, yeah,
So walk us through a little bit, if you're happy to do that.
yeah,
What is provided and what's the treatment?
yeah. Well, I'm 2 weeks into having what is called a CPAP machine. It stands for something, CPAP. Um, I just know, to be completely frank and honest with you and whoever may be watching this, that I don't like it. Um,
Mm,
because, again, with that Star Wars mindset, for those people who know Darth Vader, I go to sleep now with this plastic mask on my face. I feel completely unattractive to my partner. I feel that I'm attached to a hose into a pump that
mm,
essentially fuels air through this pump into my lungs so that when I go to sleep, my body won't go into an apnea state. Um,
right.
so,
So
not to be
straight away
negative.
there, we have another issue, don't we? Again, of
Mm,
coming in, to join us in terms of trauma and terms of coping with this condition, which is that you don't like it, you feel it's unattractive to your partner, and that's challenging. I understand. Yeah.
all that and mixed with the medications and the lack of
Mm,
libido and those sorts of things we talked about offline too. But
yeah.
yeah, it's been rough that way, but again, it's better than the alternative, right? So I'm trying to switch my mindset to go to more positive state, John.
Mm.
And
Is
so the
is the
last,
mask? Are you finding the mask is helping?
oh, absolutely, yes. Well, I had a debrief this morning actually before we had connected here, and with the local sleep clinic. my numbers before were something in the high severe number of 45 episodes per night. I don't know what that means, but I had 45 apnea episodes a night, and now I'm at 1.8. So far better because I have that steady flow of oxygen going into my body through the mask, through the hose, through this pump on my bedside table. It's been a lifesaver, I think, because again,
Mm.
now my body has the oxygen consistently through. My nightmares are far, far less, in tandem possibly with a medication that I've been prescribed.
And
Um,
are you actually noting that or noticing that you're waking up now and your sleep has felt better?
yes, absolutely. Yep. Yeah. So
Mm.
I wake up rested. I don't think I
Mm.
felt that in 45 years
Wow. And
because
so
of the
you're not
dreams and
actually
things. Yeah.
having these things. I mean, it must have been exhausting constantly coming awake.
Yeah, but
Mm.
I'm probably in my old mindset. I wouldn't have known different, or I wouldn't have been a person to complain. I just would have powered through, right? So now,
Mm.
with this self-care mindset, with the self-advocacy, with being open to try new things in terms of treatment, I've been trying to be less reluctant, less negative with this, Darth Vader foolishness,
Mm.
to recognize the value that these resources and supports have for people. And I think 2 weeks into my treatment with the CPAP machine, it's been a game changer, to be honest. Yeah, it's been really
Right.
great.
And have
Yeah.
the doctors made any linkage between, that maybe there was lack of oxygen before and high
hmm
blood pressure, or what may have occurred for you? Has any linkage been made? Is that being looked into?
Started to early days. So after this consultation today with the sleep clinic, I met with my family doctor and we were talking through the numbers, and she just make a notation in my file that it's been positive and my dreams are far less intrusive. And um,
Mm.
yeah, it's been, and I wake up once maybe per night now versus 4 or 5 times a night.
Great.
It's still
Yeah.
not perfect, but it's far cry from what it was. I don't wake up screaming. I don't have to
Yeah,
call
sure.
911 for an ambulance to be whisked off because of an apnea episode where I couldn't wake up.
Yeah.
That's part of the journey, I suppose. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
So I just want to pause there and um, hand over to Joshua
Mhm.
um, to ask if there's any messages and anybody's talking and making comments.
Well,
Hello,
we're
Joshua.
hello. We're definitely going to say hi to a few people.
Perfect. Awesome.
Velda and Natalie are
Hey,
our
well done.
part of his Canadian cohort. They're here to say hi, showing a lot of
Awesome.
Great.
support.
Welcome.
Molly and Christina have joined the chat, as well as Bruce.
Perfect.
Mhm.
It's awesome.
I
Thank you.
am excited to hear about the self care of sleep. I think that, in the earliest stages of post any operation, rest is what you need more than anything in order to stitch
hmm
yourself back together. So hearing that you're adopting an apnea machine, getting better rest,
Yeah.
like these are all very big clues for some people that are like, no, that doesn't work for me.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Well, in my case, and I can't speak for everyone, of course, adopting meditation has been a good change that kind of led me on an openness path, Joshua, in terms of being receptive to change. So if I could use meditation where I never did before to calm my mind and to kind of regulate the body, there's a number of apps you can look into, I imagine, but my doctor and my therapist have both suggested an app called Balance, not to name drop or give free advertising to that particular tool. I know
Well,
there's
if it
others, and I
works,
know,
great. Yeah.
yeah,
Balance, it's called.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
Hmm.
and I know that the Aortic Cope community, there's a resource that has been talked about from a few other folks in terms of adopting meditation. So that's been one of my pieces,
Mm.
is implementing meditation in my daily practice, not just at bedtime, a few times through the day when my mind or my mood was going in a negative way. Regular bedtime has been a part of it. So I've, outside of my love of hockey and the playoffs when the NHL are roaring through, I try to make sure I commit to a regular bedtime.
Hmm.
Um, I've always been a
Is
reader.
that a hard thing for you then? Are you a bit
Oh
of a night
goodness, I had
owl?
to. Well, I'm a long-suffering Edmonton Oilers fan, if that means anything to anybody. And so I lived through the decade of darkness, they call it, when the team wasn't so great for many years. And
I've
now
been
we've
there in a different sport, yeah, and not
exactly.
more than a decade, I think.
No, you would feel through the football community, I imagine. Yes. Yeah. So
So
yeah,
that
so
would
I
keep
watched
you
the
up at night,
games
yeah.
now, but yeah, so I stayed
Mm.
up late last night to watch the game because it's Stanley Cup Finals.
Nail
But I
biter.
normally commit to it. Yeah. Oh gosh, great game. But yeah, 4-3. Good drives, that'll go. Anyway, so then yeah, I make sure I've always been a non-screen person at bedtime. But then a little self-check is to make sure that you try to go into bed with a book, a low light to options and versus an intrusive bedside lamp kind of thing.
Mhm.
Because that all
And
just calms
presumably
your
a
mind
book
down.
that isn't too over stimulating. I mean, I'm
I
guessing that we're not
try.
no Darth Vader books beside the bed, and maybe, maybe less
No,
of that kind of film in your life.
I would
Maybe
love to say I don't, but
more
I do.
romantic rom-coms. You need more.
Unfortunately,
This is
not.
for your
No.
pathway to recovery. I'm prescribing you rom-coms. I'm
Sounds
onto
good.
something there.
I
I'm a
think you
great
are.
believer in film as therapy.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I will try to adopt that into my reading practice, John. Yeah, no, I've got a good spy thriller going now, so it's been quite
Good.
nice. But
Yeah.
I'll take your advice. I'm open to feedback as we go through. So
Right.
rom-coms, I'm not sure about, but I'll try to find something more tame.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no. So then the apnea piece, I guess, to Joshua's comment, has been great for trying to make sure that's been part of my nightly practice. And my wife has been amazing. Like but since we've been together for since 1996, and I can't do math. Somehow she still puts up with me, and has been just amazing in this journey together. And yeah,
That's
as
lovely to
we
hear,
move through
and
it.
a big thank you to her.
Oh, no, absolutely, no, Susan's great.
What comes across to me is, and it hasn't been easy, but seems like you've been really brave, and you've done great.
Thank
And
you.
it's about, isn't it, taking it day by day. Things
Hmm.
are cropping up, but you sounds like you're making good progress, and it's inspiring to hear you.
Thank you.
Your courage through this situation. You've been through the first trauma of
Mm.
the actual aortic dissection occurrence, but also this very powerful second
Yeah.
trauma. And here
Yeah.
you are talking to us.
That's a pleasure. Absolutely. Well, I joked
So,
earlier that I'm an open book, John. So
so before we go, just back to Joshua,
mhm.
Oh,
see if there are any more comments.
chat is enthralled and quiet.
Okay, great.
That's rare for Velda.
They're
She's
listening
great.
up. Yeah. Okay. Well, it's been lovely to have you on.
Thank you so much.
Been a real pleasure to hear your story, and obviously, if people have got questions about sleep apnea, they can write in, they can send messages.
Sure.
Aortic Hope will follow up with that, I'm sure.
Mhm.
And it's another example of how trauma, post-traumatic stress plays out in many different ways,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
everybody's different. Yes.
Very true.
So I'm going to close now, but I want
Yep,
to thank
sounds great.
everybody, and thank you, Joshua. Thank you, everyone who's listening. Thank you once again to yourself, Jeremy. And just a reminder to like and subscribe to us, please, everybody.
Great. Thank
So
you very much for the opportunity today, John. It's been
thank
great.
you.
Thanks, Joshua,
Okay.
as well.
Bye
Bye,
bye.
everyone.